Welcome back, everybody. I'm Naha. This is 30 Days of Tarot, and we're just about halfway through October, and it actually started to feel a little bit like fall in Los Angeles today. I was actually wearing a sweater earlier. Amazing. So I've been thinking actually about the fact that prior to doing this YouTube channel, all of my teachings and all of my students were all local here in Los Angeles. But now I'm reaching this larger audience of people that are not only across the country, but also across the world. And I'm really curious to hear where you guys live. So if you want to, this time down in the comments below, just state where you're from, what country you're from, or what city you're from. I'd love to see that. So today I've got something to open, and I'm really not sure what this is gonna be. I am a little bit leaning towards the skeptical side, but I might be wrong, and this might be really, really amazing. So this is something, I'm pretty sure it's brand new, and as you can see is a dirty package, but I got this from Amazon, and this was one of those things Amazon told me to buy. It was like, based on your buying history, we think that you would like this. And so I took a look at it initially, and I was like, yeah, looks cool. I kind of threw it in my cart, ordered it, got it, put it in the box, forgot about it. And I don't know anything about this, although I did look up a little bit online and I couldn't really get a full feel for the images. I'm just going to have to open it and we'll do that together now. So I believe that this deck is called the AlcheMystic Woodcut Tarot. Alchemistic, not even exactly sure. But I did look up about the creator of this deck. Their name is D.W. Prudence, and I think that I saw that they actually have a channel. If it's not their channel, it's a channel that talks specifically about these cards. This is a really heavy package. I almost wasn't sure if this was a deck, if it feels like heavy like a book. All right, so here we see right off the bat the AlcheMystic Woodcut Tarot, Secret Wisdom of the Ages, D.W. Prudence. You guys know that I am into alchemy, right? Well, maybe you don't know that, but you know that my school is 22 Teaching School of Hermetic Science and Magical Arts. So most of you probably already understand what the magical arts are, and that is things like ritual and meditation and ceremony. And what the Hermetic Sciences are is a range of topics, metaphysical and esoteric, including things like sacred geometry, astrology, numerology, the tarot, theurgy, and alchemy. And alchemy is the art of transmutation, turning something from a base material up into a more exalted material. So on one hand, there is practical alchemy, laboratory alchemy, and that works on multiple levels. So there's plant alchemy, which is called spagyrics. And in plant alchemy, you're taking a raw plant material, you're breaking it apart, you're distilling it, you're purifying the individual parts of that, putting it back together into something like a tincture or a medicine or an oil. And then, of course, there's also mineral alchemy, which is transmuting and working upon metals, for instance, turning a base material into gold. And while gold making is not still popularly practiced, it was definitely at one time. And so when people are talking about performing alchemy at this point in time, although practical alchemy is still very much a thing, most of the time what they're speaking on is philosophical alchemy. And that is alchemy of the self, spiritually purifying one's own self, and through that going through a transformation to ultimately be in more of a state closer to the divine, and working on oneself, clearing away the things that are low vibrational, transmuting base energies into higher frequencies is a process known as the great work, getting oneself closer and closer to that state of unity and connection to source. I was very fortunate when I still lived in Seattle to be able to study with one of the modern masters of alchemy, Robert Bartlett. And he's actually the author of 2 books on alchemy that I very strongly recommend. These are also on my website recommended reading list. The first one is Real Alchemy, a primer to practical alchemy, and that is laboratory alchemy and spagyria. And there's a companion book that he wrote, which is called The Way of the Crucible. And another book that is really great if you are interested in plant-based alchemy is this one, which is by Manfred Junius, The Practical Handbook of Plant Alchemy. A very classic book is this one, Frater Albertus's Alchemist's Handbook. So if you are interested in the more practical side of alchemy, those are the books that I recommend. And I also wanted to share with you guys, as we're getting into this deck, who some of the important people have been in the history of alchemy. But of course, let's start with the creator of this deck, as I said, D.W. Prudence, who has worked as a hypnotherapist and a tarot card reader, has studied therapeutic touch, kundalini yoga, palmistry, magic, and Kabbalah for many years before finally becoming a non-denominational Christian. He believes symbolism, tarot cards, and the Kabbalistic tree of life are an effective means of spiritual contemplation that can be used to augment one's spiritual development. I would agree. Now, here we see this box, and it says 78 card tarot deck using woodcuts crafted between the 16th and 19th centuries. This is also the time when gold making was very much a thing. I like the fact that this deck is apparently Kabbalistic, because that's very much my background. And if you don't know what that is working with the Tree of Life glyph, which you probably have seen if you have been working with tarot for a little while. Even if you are not formally a Kabbalist, you probably have come across that. Kabbalah and the Tree of Life takes the tarot and it makes a roadmap out of it and helps you to see how all of the different 78 cards connect together. So opening this up, so I've been talking a little bit recently about how these decks that I've been getting come with books, but the book is separate. It's something you have to purchase. So it is kind of nice when it all does come together. And yeah, this is 2018, so it did just come out. Here's the Tree of Life right here. So we can see the 10 spheres and then the 22 connecting paths. So the 10 spheres correspond to the aces through tens in the tarot, and then the connecting paths correspond to the major arcana. And there was a question that I got recently where somebody was saying that they didn't understand the connection between the Hebrew letters and the major arcana. And that's something that I've been showing you guys in a few different decks lately. So the Hebrew letters correspond to the 22 paths, and the cards correspond to the 22 paths. So that's how we can connect those together. So we see some history of how Kabbalah and tarot cards connect, secret wisdom of the ages, and then we start getting into each card and its explanation. Now, alchemy is said to have its roots in ancient Egypt, the land of Chem, the dark land. And it's been brought forward across time and through the Middle Ages, and there's a couple very important players in alchemy in the 1500s. One of those being Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, and he was a German writer and magician and alchemist and theologian. And he wrote the very influential and still available today 3 books on occult philosophy. He incorporated the ideas of Kabbalah with the ideas of Western magic, and he contributed a lot to our magical lineage that we have today and laid out a lot of the correspondences that to this day are still used. Now, a contemporary of Agrippa was a man known as Paracelsus. Now, Paracelsus was a Swiss-born occultist. He was also a physician. He was an astrologer, he was a botanist, and he was an alchemist. And he was very important and influential in creating early medicines. And some would say that he is one of the fathers of modern medicine. And being very much the alchemist that he was, he laid the foundation and could also be called the godfather, if you will, of modern alchemy. And it was Frater Albertus in the 20th century who founded the Paracelsus Research Society in Salt Lake City, which was a laboratory and school of alchemy, and he was a very, very important teacher, and that is also where Robert Bartlett, who was my alchemy teacher, also taught until he ended up retiring from there and moving back up to Washington. If you'd like to know a little bit more about Hermetics, about Hermetic science and Kabbalah and how those things work together and the Tree of Life, I have a series of lectures on my website, and they're each 2 hours long. They're all downloadable in the shop. They cost $15 each, and I think there's 5 different ones up now. There's ones that are on the Tree of Life and the Tarot, the history of Hermetics, the history of Kabbalah. So you guys might want to check those out. But let's go ahead and look at this deck, shall we? So all of this is leading up to something that I should be totally into. My question is, how am I going to feel about this artwork? So I'm very picky when it comes to artwork, and you wouldn't think so with the amount of decks that I've shown you guys, but I actually am. And this deck is so different. It's so weird. It's like I don't know, even looking at it right away, I don't know how I feel about it. So it's got a very nice presentation, nice box, a nice big book, and it's in 2 little packets here. So I'm just going to open up one of these. And one of the things that I don't love in my tarot decks, and I think why I'm a little bit like about this, is I'm not a big fan of overly digitalized looking things. You know, I really like hand illustration, and I like collage work and graphic design, but not when it looks like it's all just made on a computer. And so I couldn't understand the juxtaposition of something that was digitally created, but that also incorporates 15th century woodcuts. I'm going to actually show you the back of these cards first. The back of these is pretty cool. And we have a sort of tree of life looking symbol here, but it's not just that. We actually have the 7-pointed star here, the star of the Azoth. We have the alchemical elements of philosophical mercury and sulfur and fire, water, air. There we have the rebus, which is the sort of half male, half female figure. And here is the Fool. Now just take this image in for a second. As you can see, we have this woodcut styling, but then we have this green background. These cards are extremely glossy. I'm trying not to get the light reflection in there. Here we see the Magician. I don't know that I recognize this image, but I did see that some of these images I do recognize. Here's the High Priestess. Do you see how all of the figures are just yellow and it's only the background that has color? Apparently that is to be the indicator of the aspect of gold that we are looking to either turn a metal into or to raise ourselves to this state of gold. Here we see the Empress, and she interestingly has all of these Masonic tools, and then we see the cross on one side and we see the rod of Asclepius with a single snake on the other side. So definitely some interesting Christian imagery, which we also see here. This is Moses, right, with the receiving the commandments, receiving the tablet. Here we see the Hierophant, and we know that this is the high priest of Israel because if you can see this, he has the breastplate there, which was set with the 12 stones of the 12 tribes of Israel. Here's a beautiful Lover's card with a male figure wrestling some kind of dragon or sea creature. And these are definitely classic images that were used here. I like the fact that it's almost like this library of these important figures. There's the wheel, the classic wheel that we know. There's Justice, of course. This was a more traditional depiction of the Hanged Man in this X figure. Death. A lot of very, very esoteric symbolism here, and I feel that this is more of a deck for research and exploration than it is necessarily a deck for divination, and for that I am appreciating it. This is a beautiful moon. It's still going to take me some time to get used to these just green and yellow cards, though. You know what I mean? Okay, there's the World. Let's start taking a look at the minors. And right off the bat, okay, we see that the background color has changed. And I believe that it's going to be different by suits because we can see that these are red. And the suits here are called the Alchemists, the Ace of Alchemists. And I did see that the 4 suits here are the Alchemists, the Mages, the Mystics, and the Shekinah. The Alchemists are said to correspond to the element of fire because the process of alchemy is an active one. There we see Melusine. She is the origin of the Starbucks logo. You know, we see her with the 2 tails there. There we see that composite male and female, and the process of adding fire to purify. And I was kind of expecting that we would see the different stages of alchemy represented here, and I don't know if that is exactly how this was approached. Here we see the page of alchemists. If you can, you might be able to hear that these cards are kind of like sticking together a little bit because they're super glossy in that way. I think that they're cool. I just think that they're so different. I'm just not really totally used to the way that they're looking. Now, that was the suit of alchemists. This is the suit of mages. This is kind of cool. This hand you can't really see, but there's all kinds of palmistry notes are on here, the different planets, and this is just kind of cool. There's this store that's right down the street from House of Intuition, and it's called Memento Mori, and they have all sorts of spooky stuff, sort of curiosity cabinets, sort of occult things. This deck kind of reminds me of them. So here we see Hermes Trismegistus, the author of the Hermetic texts, specifically the Emerald Tablet being one that you might be familiar with, from which we derive the Hermetic phrase, as above, so below. As things exist on a higher plane, so do they exist on a lower plane. Here we see the Four of Mages, and now we're starting to get into these interesting Kabbalistic and Hermetic. There's a classical Kabbalistic image. Some of these pentacles here, these are taken from Solomon's Key. Some of you guys might have that Thames and Hudson book on alchemy. I think it's called Alchemy and Mysticism, that has a lot of these engravings in it. And I don't know, do you see how it is kind of like this cool sort of little library of all of these symbols? But I don't know how easy it would be to connect the symbols to the exact divination. For instance, this is kind of interesting. We've got the tetragrammaton. Here we see the hexagram, but this to me is the numbers 6 and 5. So I would see this more as an 11 than I would necessarily connect it to the number 9. And then here we see the 10 of Mages. We'll look at Mercury there, Hermes, and he's part of the zodiac. We can see him with his winged heels and helmet. But let's go ahead and take a look at the next suit. And this is the suit of mystics. So this would correspond to cups. And is said to be the suit for those seeking personal understanding and relationship with God. That very much sounds like the concept of Gnosticism. So again, the background color has changed. Now we see this deeper sort of indigo blue color. But I don't see any correspondence here with any classical tarot imagery. This is a departure. I like this. The Hand of God. That's cool, right? And the funny thing is I don't specifically see the connection of these images with the classical Tree of Life symbolism either. They just really seem to be a beautiful collection of woodcuts put together, made into a deck. And I feel like I'm really going to enjoy reading the book and kind of seeing the story and the source for each of these. Some of them are very esoteric, like we see here. And then others are familiar to me. And I really was thinking, when I saw some of these online, I thought, I don't think I'm going to like this deck. And now I actually am kind of into it now that I'm seeing it. It's not like something I'm going to get rid of. This is the final suit, and this is the suit of the Shekinah. Here we see an expression, all of the titles of the spheres, the 10 spheres of the Tree of Life. We see here the cherubim with 4 heads, that also which correspond to the 4 fixed signs, which we see around the corners of cards like Wheel of Fortune and the World. And this is the vision of Ezekiel. Now, the Shekinah is said to be the indwelling of God, and it corresponds to the feminine principle of God. But interestingly, these are not said to be corresponding to one of the feminine suits, which the two feminine suits are Cups and Pentacles. This is the one that is supposedly corresponding to Swords. So the Shekinah representing a person having been indwelt with the spirit of truth and through such completing the great work, baptized with fire and facing adversity. Now, as far as the completion of the great work goes, that truly is a lifelong journey and a lifelong mission and practice for those who consider themselves alchemists or hermeticists. There's the 10 and the page and the queen and the king. So a lot of Christian iconography as well as a lot of alchemical here. Totally different. Really wasn't sure what to expect. Still don't know exactly how I feel about it. It's something new. It's different. It's an interesting presentation. I feel like the fact of how these cards are sort of this glossy material isn't going to lend itself to them shuffling very easily, but it does seem like they would be beautiful laid out together in a spread. And I can also see using these as individual altar pieces or just single cards for contemplation and meditation. Ultimately, probably using these as a study tool more than anything. Some of the pentacle suit, I think that they look really cool with just the yellow and then the red background. But I think it's the ones that are green that just are sort of weird to me because they have that ancient aspect, but then that sort of modern digital looking background. So it's unique. It's different. And this deck came out actually by the publishing company Red Feather. We've seen a lot of decks coming out by them, and one way you can know that is they have these nice kind of magnetic boxes. So the Hip Chick Tarot, do you guys remember that one? Loved that one. And also the Ostara deck, that one I reviewed last year, but the video is up here. That was also by this company Red Feather. So they're putting some unique things out, definitely different. So thank you guys for being here and taking a look at this deck with me. Tomorrow is going to be the halfway point of this series, and we're going to do some cool things. I'm going to give some shout outs to you guys who have been supporting the channel and following along. And we are also 1 week away from a very, very big announcement. And it's an announcement that is beyond the scope of this channel. There is something that I have been working on and I haven't gotten a chance to share it with anybody yet. So I am going to be announcing what that is on the 21st. So stay tuned. I hope that you guys are having a great fall so far, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.